and welcome to Phosphorus Live, our bi-weekly look at the very interesting world of xIoT, the extended Internet of Things. I'm your host, Mike Huckaby. I'm the VP of Sales Engineering here at Phosphorus, and I'm joined, as always, by our device-obsessed, newly promoted Director of Sales Engineering, James McCarthy. James, say hello.
Hello.
What's happening at the xIoT news desk?
Yeah, a couple interesting things have come up over the last couple months that I wanted to highlight here. So a few months ago, the FCC actually released a new cybersecurity IoT badge program, right, for all xIoT devices. Signals a really good push from the government to start focusing on the security posture of xIoT in the US. But new details have been coming out about the program that leaves me and probably the rest of us here at Phosphorus a little underwhelmed. The details of the badge are that it basically is a QR code that takes a visitor to a page that describes the kind of cybersecurity posture of the device, talks about patching and security and if it updates automatically, which sounds great, except that the program is going to be not a requirement and simply a recommendation from the FCC for organizations to participate in. So obviously the hope is that the manufacturers start leveraging that to increase awareness about the security posture for these devices, but without enforcement, adoption doesn't seem very likely.
Yeah.
Additionally, there was an issue recently with the company Wise. They make a bunch of kind of commercial, residential grade security cameras, amongst a bunch of other IoT devices. But they released a notice that for a short period of time, all of the camera feeds that were being fed to their platform by all of the cameras in the world made both the images and videos available for anyone to be able to see. So if you knew where this URL was in their AWS infrastructure, you could access pretty much any video feed for any Wise camera on the planet. So anyone with one of these cameras in their home or business was suddenly basically wide open to the world. This was actually due to basically a security or software oversight on the cloud side of the infrastructure, which for me highlights a really big problem with a lot of the modern IoT that's being deployed in organizations today, which is so much of it requires some form of connectivity to a cloud or some sort of integration to that vendor's, SaaS platform. And the problem with that is now all of a sudden you're shifting both the security and the data and everything about that device to a cloud environment that you have no visibility into. So that was the case here, right? Wise, I'm sure, made all the right efforts and did as best they could to secure everything. But at the end of the day, the video and audio from inside of one of your locations or a warehouse or something is pretty valuable data. And for that to go to a cloud and to be mismanaged like that is a pretty big issue. So definitely something to consider and look out for. And it really just highlights just how important not only knowing where every single device is on your network, but also knowing how they're configured, right? Who's actually configured to send data up to a cloud. So those are the updates for today.
Well, thanks, James. I know that so many of the Wise devices too are consumer like devices at homes. I know I have some. But with shadow IT and people bringing in those devices and plugging them into the corporate network, it also causes a lot of problems. So IT is not even planning on some of these devices to be in the network. And so having some way to be able to find them, make sure that you know what's on the network is really, really important.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something we see at customers all the time when we get deployed is we see these devices like cameras or consumer grade hardware or even Raspberry Pis sitting on the network that IT had no idea was even there.
So true. All right. Well, thank you, James. And now let's get on to our topic for today, getting under the covers at Phosphorus, cameras and things everywhere. This is a fun episode for us as we wanted to give you all a look at our Phosphorus Lab, which is really, I say it's the heart of what makes Phosphorus really tick. This is the result of our device obsession here. Well, you might ask, why do you even have a lab? Well, when you look at it from our mindset, if you want to help organizations like all of yours, we want to help you secure these often unmanaged and unmonitored devices, we first have to understand the device. If we're going to learn to talk to a device, then we need to have it in our hands and truly get to know it. And only then we can be confident enough with the knowledge enough to be able to help all of our customers and all of you. Our whole approach is start with the device and move out from there. So let's go take a look. First off, I'm being helped today by our sales engineer, Brian Vandenhovel. Brian, come on and say hello to everybody. Brian's going to be following me around with the camera, guiding me through some of the devices that we're going to look at today as well. And so I'm going to kill my video and move over to his. All right, great. We're going to do a quick drive-by. This is the lab with all of our racks, and we've got a couple of rooms over here with other devices. But before we go and look at any of the specific devices, I want to come over and introduce you to our lab guru, Eric Brown. Now, Eric, he's the person who makes this whole lab sing. So thanks. I appreciate you taking a few minutes with us, Eric, because I think you might have maybe the most fun job here at Phosphorus. So can you give us a little bit of an insight into what you do?
Sure. So often we go out to sites and we do scans, preliminary, like demos. Keep it simple. And what we get back here is like a dump of devices. Some of them are easily identified by our product. Some of them aren't. And those ones that aren't, I usually get a request to, hey, figure out how this works. So we'll go ahead and purchase those devices, or we'll procure them from the customer themselves. And from there, I get it, I'll poke and prod at it. Sometimes I take it apart. I look for if there's exposed pins where I can get access, maybe serial connections. But my main goal is to try to figure out how to get it on the network, get it where we can talk to it, figure out the proprietary software and things needed so that we can get it in a state that our product can then talk to it and then probe it and prod it and find out its vulnerabilities.
So you get the devices in, procure them in some other way, then you get to poke and prod. Then kind of as you said, you kind of alluded that you get inside of it and you really try to figure out how it works a little bit. Can you give us a little bit more information on that?
Sure. So oftentimes I can easily just connect to the network with a network cable and get an IP address, maybe find out what ports are open through some scans or some other methods. But other times I have to disassemble, maybe connect to some UART pins and figure out how to get connectivity and figure out how to manipulate the device that way in order for us to be able to integrate against it.
Cool. So once you have it connected, it's in your lab, then what happened? How does the company utilize this?
From there, I usually hand it off to the device team. And so I give them like some preliminary data, like here are the open ports. Here is the software needed. Maybe here's some of the protocols being used. Okay. But from there, they use their skills to figure out how to do password rotations, figure out how to plug and patch firmwares, all of those types of things.
Okay, great. And I know from our perspective, we also then use the Phosphorus platform to go and find all of the devices here so that we can interact with them as well, like even when we show them to our customers.
Right.
Yeah. Great. I said that I think you have the most fun job here. Why do you think I say that? What makes your job so fun?
Oh, this job is awesome. So I'm a network engineer by trade. So all the time I'm doing my network engineering, but I actually get a chance to explore all kinds of different devices from OT to IoT to whatever platform you guys decide to bring to me. Say, Eric, figure it out. So I get some time to tinker, what I call it, as well as like do traditional network engineering and design.
Yeah. Anything you're working on right now that's interesting?
I wish I did have something like super interesting to show you right now. But I don't have anything that's a showstopper at the moment, and I apologize for that.
All right. We got a couple of things we're thinking about sending your way. So thank you so much. Really, really appreciate your time, Eric. So let's take a look, Brian, at some of the stuff we have over here. We're going to sneak behind Eric here. Just start. As we go through here, there's so many different types of devices, so many different families. First thing you see, everything looks different. Even if they're in the same family of device, they look different. Here we have a number of cellular gateways. We see these being deployed so often in organizations to allow mobile devices to connect, mobile devices like handheld scanners, those types of things, into the mobile gateways. And we're finding these are proliferating throughout organizations as well. Which again, you can see different sizes, shapes, and blinking lights around them. As we kind of come around here, this is our medical corner. We've got a Philips IntelliView up there at the top that you might see in any hospital room, a number of infusion pumps. Part of one of the reasons why we have this lab is devices like these that are life-critical devices, we have to make sure that we know it so well that we don't ever interrupt its operation within a hospital. And so that's why we have them here to be able to look at. But it's interesting because it allows us to take it in. We're going to come back to this in just 1 second as well. We see some really neat kind of devices that we show up, and sometimes you don't even realize it. We see a lot more of biometrics. So if you look right up here, this is a camera, biometric camera for facial recognition. We see a number of these coming through as well, and as we're building support for those types of devices as well. We have our fun, big, Fanuc robot arms right in the middle. And no, I'm not going to play with it or move it today, but you can see these types of devices that are so key in manufacturing. There's, you get in there and you know that there's a little piece of firmware inside of here that's managing it. And so our ability to understand how to communicate with that firmware to get information off of it is very, very key. So having this in here allows us to then talk to a bunch of different types of Fanuc devices. You can see as we kind of go through here, a number of printers. So many organizations have printers that are installed and never, ever touched again. No updates, default credentials. There's so many different models of them that we have representative devices here of the different models and manufacturers so that we can make sure that we're helping you all keep those things up to date. We see in manufacturing environments, on production floors, zebra printers, different sizes, always printing out different types of labels and other things. So we have a number of those in here as well. As we kind of go across, as you kind of get a little bit of a look at some of the things, we've got KVM switches, we've got APC units in here, PDUs that are in here as well, a number of phones and a number of IP phones as well. And then down here, right in the corner, we have something that, it's got a special place in our heart for this network connected crockpot. One of the early devices that we brought into the lab when we thought, well, maybe what we'll do is create a commercial or a consumer product. And then we got in a connected a crockpot. I'm not sure if we've ever cooked with it. I'm not sure if it works, but it does talk on the internet and we know how to find it. So if I come over here to finally, this is our PLC wall. And you can see there are a number of devices that are connected in here from different manufacturers. This is a super important part of our lab, knowing that not only do you have PLCs, but you also have a number of things plugged into those PLCs. This part of our lab allows us to kind of build out models like you, our customers, have that allow us to not only interact with the PLC, but to start seeing what's behind the PLC and what those things are doing. This is a fun thing that we always like to talk about. So many of these PLCs have these keys. Those are physical keys, and they can get turned to run mode or programming mode. And really sometimes very hard to know if they're at what mode they're in. And it's one of the things we like to be able to show, because Phosphorus, as we find the devices, we can go and alert people on what that physical key is actually doing. Again, it coming back to, because we talk to devices, because we know the devices, we can interact and do really interesting things that that you wouldn't be able to do if you don't do what we do, talking devices. All right, I want to go over here and Eric mentioned that he gets to pull things apart, plug into them, see what's inside of them. Well, I've got an example right here. This is one of the Bebron infusion pumps. So our understanding of how a device works, we want to make sure that we understand how these things are connected. Are there rogue ways to be able to get into it? Are there elements of the device that we can interrogate and then be able to expose to all of you, our customers? So as you can see, there's a lot of plastic, but there's a really important function here inside of this device that actually puts medicine to a person. And then the brains that are right there. We need to understand how we talk to that brain. We need to understand how we keep that brain secure. And that's why we kind of tear these apart. So this gets to be one of the fun things that we get to do to really be able to understand all of the devices that are there. For us, as on sales engineering, we get to take all of these things that we learn and turn it around and help to educate all of you on the devices that we see, because many of these, all of these, you probably have either seen or they're in your environment. Now, here's something that's very interesting. It's something that we get asked all the time, and you may be asked as well, which is there are billions of devices. You can see in here, we've got a room full of them here, but we know there's a lot more manufacturers, models of all these different devices. How do you scale to be able to handle all those devices? So one of the things that we wanted to do, James, if I could have you come on, wanted James to sit here and talk a little bit about how we view the devices and how that the way our viewpoint makes us able to manage these devices really well.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the questions we get asked fairly often when we speak with customers is, because we start off the conversation with trying to talk through the scale of the xIoT problem in the world. And we know that's a significant scale. It's so much larger than even the scale of kind of the traditional IT, because there's 60 billion devices out there. And so how do we, as a kind of young growing company, how do we keep up with that and do it in a meaningful way for enterprise? And how do we kind of scale with the xIoT growth, not only to catch up with the world, but then also to kind of keep pace as new devices come out every day. And so one of the things we figured out early on as an organization when we were trying to solve this problem was there's a really interesting phenomenon in IoT that is you can have completely different devices, even across manufacturers, right? Sometimes even different manufacturers leverage the same core operating systems, but you get this approach where we say, okay, instead of looking at every single device as an individual unique thing that we need to support, let's take a step back and actually look at the genus of devices in xIoT. And so what we do is we take what we call the genus species approach, which is to say, when we look at a device, we try to understand the operating system or the firmware family that's under the hood. And so that when we build our ability to profile or take device actions or do password rotations for that firmware, we're doing it for the family of that firmware as opposed to the individual piece that in that moment, right? And so what that allows us to do is get that economy of scale across devices, because one manufacturer might have 50 different IP cameras, looking at U-axis, but they might only have one core operating system under the hood of all 50 of those different models. And what's really, really fun is we actually have some, and I'm going to show this here really quickly. We actually can see this in our device representation. So we're looking right here at the screen. I've got two different devices, both manufactured by Axis, but they provide two very different functions, right? One of them's an IP camera and one of them's a door controller. Completely different functional devices. You can't swap those out in any way. They're seemingly, kind of at your first blush, you would never think that there's any commonality between those two devices because they do such different things. But because of the way Axis works, for us, those are functionally the same device in the sense that when we went out and looked for and built support for this door controller, we found that they were leveraging the same underlying operating system as the actual camera itself as well. So I'm going to go ahead and show the camera here, but I'm having an issue because Zoom has got an overlay. There we go. So we've got the door controller here. from Axis. And if we scroll down, you can see all of the different details and the models. We can see the serial number, the firmware version, the active track, as well as, part numbers or model numbers. But we go up here and we look at this camera and we can see the same kind of content and the same kind of detail. And so what's great is for us, it took very little to no effort for us to be able to support the door controller because we already supported the IP camera, right? And so we get that built-in economy of scale. So we don't have to keep reinventing the wheel every single time we find a new device, which is often, right? What's also really fun is that when we start to extrapolate and build more support for a device, right? We do the profiling right out of the gate. That's the first step we normally approach for a device. But as we start to do other interesting things like unlock the ability to rotate a credential or upgrade the firmware or take other kinds of device actions, what we find is a lot of those device actions actually carry over from device to device, even if they're, again, completely different things. So in this case here, we can actually flash the LED on this camera. And so that's a device action we can take because the firmware underlying in that firmware OS had that ability or had that function that we could call to execute that command. And so for a warehouse or for somebody trying to service one of these devices, being able to flash that LED so that you can kind of see exactly where that is, which camera it is, can be a huge time-saving feature. But what's cool is we also had that ability on the door controller as well. So by doing or taking little action at all, we were able to carry over that kind of functionality to another device in that same family that was completely unrelated. And so now if an organization's been invested in Axis and they have the full Axis ecosystem, they have all sorts of new and fun options to help manage those devices through Phosphorus. And again, all at scale and all with us being able to conserve that very precious engineering time and labor.
All right. Fantastic. Thanks, James. So that is a common question that we get around how we scale and how we can cover all of the devices that are there. And sometimes in our environment, we can't bring everything into the lab. Some things are very large. Like we've had some weigh stations that and gasoline pumps that are all internet connected that we've been asked to support. And those are things that we can't actually get or bring in. So sometimes we remotely go out and learn how to talk to a device. Many times our customers either allow us to go on site, help them out with, and be able to work with some of their devices, as well as some of the manufacturers as well, so that we can do that. The way that we've taken an approach, our whole approach has been, we want to have the broadest breadth of ability across all of these devices, have large scale. And we figured out the best way to be able to do it. And then we've built an engine around being able to find these devices in a way that nobody else can. And that really makes us very unique. And again, we get really, really excited about it. This lab here is in Nashville, Tennessee, which is where our headquarters is. So James and I and others, we're always looking forward to coming out here, spending a little time with Eric, getting to see what's new in the lab as well. So we really, really were excited to be able to take you guys on a little tour as well, and appreciate you joining us. So from there, we'd like to be able to answer any questions. If anybody has any questions about the lab, about devices, about what we do, would love to be able to spend a couple of minutes to answer any questions. So you can probably go out and either put them in the chat. You might be able to raise your hand. We might be able to have you come on live, but if you can put any question you have in the chat, we can just grab it from there. Let me just wait here for a sec. How many devices do we have there? Yeah. So you want to show them on the GUI? Can you bring up Phosphorus? Because it'll show you exactly how many we have right here.
Yeah, absolutely. One moment. We look here. So this is our demo environment, but our demo environment is essentially a connection to all of our active devices that we have on the network. Now, this isn't an exhaustive view into how many devices, because not all devices are online and running and operational. So we take things up and down often. But just here looking at this, we can see that there are 328 active devices sitting in that lab, basically right surrounding you right now. With all sorts of fun, EM waves and such, all sitting in our lab here in Nashville. That's growing relatively quickly, and there's a large handful of devices that are actually out at customer locations that we also have leveraged in the past to build support for as well, like you were talking about.
Perfect. Thanks, James. All right. Any other questions? Okay. Well, again, thank you very much for joining us. We've had a good time. Hopefully you guys have had a good time. Thank you, Eric Brown. Thank you, Brian Vandenhovel, for supporting James and I in our show today. But everybody have a great day, and we look forward to talking to you all in a couple weeks. Thanks.